Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear student. I am Dr. Nausheen Firozuddin, working as a senior lecturer in pathology department of Fazaya Ulfa Medical College. I am FCPS histopathologist, graduated from Aga Khan University. I am also working as a consultant histopathologist in the diagnostic lab of PF Faisal Base. I am also masters in medical laboratory technology and also certified cytotechnologist from CPSP. Today I am discussing with you a very important topic, that is thyroid disorder. Okay, my dear students, the learning objectives of my presentations includes, first of all, a brief introduction of thyroid gland, its anatomy, its physiology. Then coming to the topic, that is the disorders of thyroid gland, which includes, first disorder is the goiter. We will discuss its types as well. Then second disorder, hyperthyroidism, the causes of hyperthyroidism and what are the clinical features of hyperthyroidism we will discuss, and the main disease which is encountered in hyperthyroidism, that is the Graves' disease, pathogenesis, morphological features, clinical correlation and diagnosis of the disease. The third disorder, the hyperthyroidism, its causes and its presentations in a person. And the last, fourth disorder of the thyroid is thyroiditis. We will discuss its all types and the most important in detail, Hashimoto thyroiditis, its pathogenesis, morphological features, clinical correlation and diagnosis. Now my dear students, as you know that this is the largest endocrine gland. It is located inferior to cricoid cartilage and it is a butterfly shaped organ comprising of two lobes, right and left, and it weighs normally about 18 to 60 grams in adult. As in this picture you can see, this is a cricoid cartilage. So the gland present inferior to it, it is almost butterfly shaped. It has two lobes, one is the right lobe, the other is the left lobe. Some of the time in some people it may show another lobe which is called pyramidal lobe. Both lobes are joined at the part of isthmus. So this is a brief revision of the anatomy of a thyroid gland, which you have already taught in the anatomy lecture. So my dear, the blood supply of the thyroid are two types. One is the arterial, other is the venous. The arterial supply includes superior thyroid artery and inferior thyroid artery. Similarly, the venous supply includes superior and inferior thyroid vein. Two nerves are very important who supply to the thyroid gland. One is the superior laryngeal nerve and other is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. The thyroid gland drains out its lymphatic fluid by two lymphoid systems. One is the lateral deep cervical lymph node, the other is the pretracheal or paratracheal lymph nodes. My dear student, the thyroid gland produces, as you all know, two types of hormone. One is the T3 hormone, the other is the T4 hormone. These two hormones are produced by thyroid gland. These thyroid gland hormones are produced under the influence of two more endocrine glands. One is the anterior pituitary gland and other is the hypothalamus. These two organs are present in the brain, in the skull. The hypothalamus produces a hormone which is named as thyroid releasing hormone. This TRH hormone stimulates the anterior pituitary gland, which in turn releases the thyroid stimulating hormone and this thyroid stimulating hormones has a receptor in the thyroid gland which when binds causes the thyroid gland to make T3 and T4 hormones. The thyroid T3 and T4 hormones basically result in increasing the metabolism of the body, causing growth and development, and they also increases the catecholamine effects. So after the stimulus from hypothalamus and from the anterior pituitary gland, the thyroid gland causes the production of T3 and T4. When these two hormones becomes within a normal range, no negative feedback mechanism occurs. But if these two hormones increases above the normal range of the blood in the body, they send a negative feedback response and causes the inhibition of release of these two hormones, the TRH and TSH. So T3 and T4 are made, they signal the hypothalamus to stop stimulating after increasing the level. You understand? The thyroid gland is basically made up of thyroid follicles, these follicular cells, and a large pool of colloid. So as you see in the picture, this is a thyroid follicle, this is a thyroid follicle, and this is the pinkish eosinophilic material is basically a colloid which is present in the lumen. The follicle is formed by the lining of cuboidal cells which are the follicular cells. The follicular cells produce thyroxine, that is T4 and T3, which is present in the thyroglobulin in an inactive form present in this colloid material, and these thyroid follicles have receptors on it which are known as TSH receptors. So after these TSH receptors stimulated, it produces T3, T4, which is present in the or stored in this colloid. Along with this, we also have some parafollicular cells, that is behind the follicles or around the follicles, which are known as C cells. These C cells are responsible for the production of calcitonin, which is another hormone which is produced by the thyroid. So these are the parafollicular cells as you see, and this is the central part which is known as colloid. Now my dear students, starting from the first disorder of the thyroid gland, that is goiter. Goiter is basically an enlargement of thyroid gland. Like you can see in this picture, there is a huge enlarged gland in front of the neck of this female. This enlargement of the thyroid gland, which is caused by impaired synthesis of thyroid hormone, most often as a result of dietary iodine deficiency, is called goiter. This how and why this occurs? Basically, when there is a impairment in the synthesis of thyroid hormone, this leads to compensatory rise in TSH level, which in turn cause hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the thyroid follicular cells. When there is impaired synthesis, leads to TSH increase level, and there is hyperplasia, that is the increase in number, hypertrophy, that is increase in size of the thyroid gland. So ultimately it causes enlargement of the thyroid gland. This enlargement can be of two types. One is the diffuse non-toxic, or we can say simple, and the other is multinodular. Diffuse non-toxic goiter and multinodular goiter. As the name indicates, diffuse mean when there is a diffuse enlargement, diffuse hyperplasia or hypertrophy of the gland, it is called diffuse non-toxic. Multinodular means when there are multiple nodules formation occurs in the gland, it is multinodular. These both types are basically on the base of morphology. The goiter present as a mass and as an enlarged mass in front of a neck, as you can see in this picture. It causes obvious cosmetic problem of large neck mass, and it also causes airway obstruction, dysphagia, compression of the large vessels of neck as well as of upper thorax, and this phenomena called as superior vena cava obstruction. So this disorder is a serious disorder. Some of the time, because of the enlarged gland, there may be a compression of the large vessels. The person may have airway obstruction and may have dysphagia. So first of all, discussing the first type of the goiter, that is diffuse non-toxic simple goiter. It is basically a thyroid enlargement from excess colloid without producing nodularity. So thyroid enlargement from excess colloid without producing nodularity. Why it is called non-toxic? Non-toxic because there is no disturbance in the thyroid function. This is only the enlargement of the gland, not the impairment of the function of the gland. Okay, that's why it is called non-toxic. Whenever there is a impairment of the function of the gland and as well, then it is called as toxic. So it is an enlargement which is a diffuse because of the excess colloid without the production of nodularity. It is of two types. One is the endemic, the other is the sporadic. This division based on the substitution or presentation of the goiter. Endemic mean it is regularly found in particular area, mostly 10% of the population affected by this. It is called endemic type. This type is usually occurs due to iodine deficiency, and it is the most common type of the diffuse non-toxic goiter. Secondly, this type basically occurs in areas where the soil, water, food supply contain low level of iodine, and due to which this causes the impaired synthesis of the thyroid hormones. Mostly it is found in the mountain areas like Himalayas mountains, and this is usually treated after the correction of iodine deficiency. Sporadic type is the second type. It includes the causes includes goitrogens like cabbage, cauliflowers, etc., enzyme deficiency, puberty, and pregnancy. These are the main causes of sporadic type. Sporadic type occurs at irregular interval only in few places. This type is more common in females, and these goitrogens are basically substances which are present in vegetables usually. This belongs to Brassicaceae family like turnip, cauliflowers, cabbage. This goitrogens acts like a thyroid stimulating hormone receptors. So they bind at thyroid stimulating hormone receptors and they inhibit the effect of TSH. Okay, and also some of the causes of enzyme deficiency in puberty, in pregnancy, there is a functional deficiency of iodide. This also results in a impaired synthesis of T3, T4, and this ultimately cause a diffuse non-toxic simple goiter. Clinically, these patients present as a euthyroid, that is, their thyroid levels are Okay, my dear students, the second entity for goiter is multinodular goiter. Multinodular goiters are multilobulate, asymmetrically enlarged glands which may attain massive size. They derive from simple goiter and they occur in both endemic and sporadic form, usually in the older people. As you see in this gross appearance of the gland, which is serially sliced, you can see there are multiple nodules. These are the nodules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are multiple nodules. In multinodular, there are asymmetrical enlargement of the gland. Why? Multiple nodules. Morphologically, these nodules on cut surface are irregular, containing varied amount of brown gelatinous colloid. As you see in this is a gelatinous colloid which is brown in color. Older lesions often shows fibrosis, hemorrhage, calcification and cystic change. As you can see in this picture, this is an area of fibrosis. The whitish area is a fibrosis, thickening of the thyroid follicular boundaries. There is hemorrhage inside and they may show calcification as well and the cystic degeneration. So these are the chronic changes of the multinodular goiter. Microscopically, the gland will show colloid-rich follicles lined by flattened and inactive epithelium, and I will show the pictures in the next slide. My dear student, now the multinodular goiter histopathologically look alike as I shown in this picture. In multinodular goiter, this is an area of normal thyroid parenchyma. You'll see small follicles filled with colloid material. On the other hand, this is an enlarged nodule which shows very enlarged follicles and it is showing abundant colloid material in the lumen. So in multinodular goiter, there will be enlarged follicles. They are lined by inactive epithelium, follicular cells, and they will produce a compression effect on the surrounding parenchyma of the normal thyroid. Like this area, it causes the compression. This area pushes the normal parenchyma and they more become shrink and smaller in size. So the normal follicular cells are of this small size, whereas in case of multinodular goiter, the follicles are more enlarged. They are like having abundant colloid and they have flattened inactive epithelial lining. Now I am also discussing in this slide the complications of multinodular goiter. Multinodular goiter may result in following complications. First of all, they may form cyst in it and which result in hemorrhage. There may be a sudden painful enlargement of the gland. The multinodular goiter may result in compression of jugular vein which causes neck congestion, and this phenomena called Pemberton sign. Basically, when the person raises its hands and changes its position, the thoracic inlet become obstructed and this result in obstruction of the jugular vein or compression of the jugular vein, and this causes the obstruction of the flow of the blood, and this phenomena called Pemberton sign. And this usually occur when this multinodular goiter appears in the retrosternal area. Okay. Multinodular goiter may also cause primary hypothyroidism. Multinodular goiter can result in toxic nodular goiter formation, in which one or more nodules become TSH independent, or we can say hot nodule. As I explained before you, that when it becomes TSH independent, the stimulation from the anterior pituitary is not appreciated. The gland will not produce T3 and T4. So whenever there is an impairment in the function of the thyroid gland, it will cause toxic goiter, toxic nodular goiter. Multinodular goiter also causes compression of the laryngeal nerve some of the time, which result in hoarseness of the voice. Multinodular goiter may result in compression of the trachea, and this will result in dyspnea. So these are the most important complications which some of the time occurs because of the presence of the multinodular goiter. Now comes to the second entity or second disorder of the thyroid gland, which is hyperthyroidism. As the name indicate, hyper mean more, thyroidism mean any condition in which there is more production of the thyroid hormone. It is called hyperthyroidism. So thyrotoxicosis it is also called as thyrotoxicosis. Thyrotoxicosis is a hypermetabolic state due to elevated circulating levels of free T3 and T4. When in blood, increased level of T3, T4 occurs, it is called hyperthyroidism or thyrotoxicosis. It is often caused by hyperfunctioning of the thyroid, and whenever it is caused by hyperfunctioning of the thyroid, the condition is called hyperthyroidism. However, if it is caused by any other reason, then it is called thyrotoxicosis. So these terms are interchangeable just because of their cause. Hyperthyroidism is of two types. One is the primary hyperthyroidism, other is the secondary hyperthyroidism. Primary hyperthyroidism is a condition when the cause lies within the gland. That is, primary source is the gland itself. However, in secondary hyperthyroidism, when the abnormality or cause is present in pituitary gland or in the hypothalamus, this is called secondary hyperthyroidism. The hyperthyroidism has multiple causes, which I'll show you in the next slide. Here I am discussing only three of them. The three most common causes of thyrotoxicosis, which are associated with hyperfunctioning of the gland, they are: number one, diffuse hyperplasia, which is associated with Graves' disease. Whenever there is an increase in number of the thyroid glands, follicular cells, it causes more production of T3 and T4. And this usually happens in a condition which is called as Graves' disease. Second is this hyperfunctional multinodular goiter. When there is a multinodular goiter and it becomes hyperfunctional or toxic, it causes hyperthyroidism. The third is the thyroid adenoma. Thyroid adenoma is a condition in which there is a benign tumor of epithelial tissue within the gland occurs. This causes hyperfunctioning of the gland and resulted in increased production of T3, T4, which ultimately cause thyrotoxicosis or hyperthyroidism. Okay, now this is a tabular representation of causes of thyrotoxicosis, and it is given in your course book. I am sharing it with you. It says that the causes of thyrotoxicosis is divided into two. One is which is associated with hyperthyroidism, other which is not associated with hyperthyroidism but it causes thyrotoxicosis. In first, the two are the entities which encountered it in it. One is the primary cause belonging to the thyroid gland only. These conditions includes, first of all, Graves' disease, that is the diffuse toxic hyperplasia of the gland. Second is the multinodular goiter, which result in the hyperfunctioning toxic goiter. Third is the adenoma, that is the benign tumor of the epithelial tissue which causes hyperfunctioning. And the fourth is the iodine-induced hyperthyroidism. Some of the time, iodine is the major source of hyperthyroidism. Secondary, as the name indicate, point out towards the pituitary source. So whenever there is a pituitary adenoma, which is very rare condition, which produces THA TSH hormone in excess, this may sometimes cause thyrotoxicosis, and it is associated with hyperthyroidism. So TSH secreting pituitary adenoma, which is a rare condition, it is a secondary cause of thyrotoxicosis. Conditions which are not directly associated with hyperthyroidism, like granulomatous decurvens thyroiditis, which I'll discuss in later slides. It is a painful form of thyroiditis in which there is inflammation of the thyroid gland, which is granulomatous inflammation. This ultimately leads to overproduction of the T3, T4 hormones. Next, second cause is the subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis, which is a painless condition in which there is a lymphocytic inflammation in the thyroid, which cause hyperthyroidism. Third cause is stroma ovariae. Stroma ovariae is an ovarian tumor. An ovarian tumor in which is a form of ovarian teratoma, in which the thyroid follicles present in the teratoma. Okay, there is a germline over proliferation of these proliferation or growth basically occurs in which multiple germlines like skin and the connective tissue and the mesoderm, endoderm and the ectoderm overgrowth. So in this, the ovary shows a tumor which shows thyroid follicles. So thyroid follicles are not normally found in ovary, but in this condition there is a teratomatous condition. This grows over there and they cause a growth over there, and this result in the overproduction of T3, T4 hormones. Then there are conditions in which there is a factitious thyrotoxicosis, that is exogenous thyroxine intake. Some conditions in which we take thyroxine medicine exogenously, and this is called thyrotoxicosis. Okay. Okay, a person having hyperthyroidism, what features does it show? In this diagram, I am representing you the hyperthyroidism on this side. So don't look at this side, just concentrate on this area. Basically, in hyperthyroidism, a person shows multiple features. First of all, which are the constitutional signs. It has a weight loss. However, even having a good appetite, person loses its weight. Why it has happened? As we know, the T3, T4 hormones causes increased catabolic effect of of carbohydrate and fat. So there is an increased metabolism, increased catabolic effect. They will result in weight loss. Then over sympathetic nervous system activity cause fine tremors of the hands and hyperactivity. There will be heat intolerance and diarrhea. Heat intolerance and diarrhea and anxiety. Why it has happened? Same cause. Sympathetic nervous system do increase activity, so increase gut motility, result in diarrhea. Heat intolerance and anxiety occurs also in this scenario. Then there will be menstrual irregularities, usually oligomenorrhea. Then there is a lid stare due to increased sympathetic stimulation of eyelid muscles. The most important clinical feature is the cardiac findings. Usually in elder persons, there is systolic hypertension, sinus tachycardia, there is palpitation, and there is cardiomegaly. Over cardiac output increase. This cardiac output causes the increased flow of the blood, increased work of the heart, and ultimately leads of cardiomegaly. There is increased risk for atrial fibrillation. There is systolic hypertension, left ventricular dysfunction, and some of the time may lead to low output heart failure. In bone, it causes increased bone turnover, that is the osteoporosis, and they will result in brisk reflexes of the person. The person may have the most important cause is of eye is exophthalmos, which I'll discuss in later slide. So one of the very important condition which occur in hyperthyroidism is thyroidostorm. What happened in this condition, when the people or the persons are under in a stressful condition, such as inadequately treated patients with Graves' disease undergo any sort of surgery, or there is an infection, or there is a trauma, or may they suffer from iodine ingestion excess, or suffering from pregnancy, they ultimately result in the overproduction of the thyroid hormone thyrotoxicosis, which in turn activate the acute elevation of catecholamines. These catecholamines produces certain sort of symptoms. For example, they cause tachyarrhythmia, they may result in hyperpyrexia, the patient may undergo volume depletion from vomiting, and some of the time shock may lead to coma. So this is a very, very dangerous condition which occurs in those hyperthyroid people when they undergo some sort of stressful condition in which increased thyroid hormone production, decreased thyroglobulin binding capacity, increased thyroid hormone sensitivity, they all leads to hyperactivity of the sympathetic system and ultimately increase in catecholamines. These catecholamine excess may affects on the heart and all the body temperature and all the volume of the body and leads to these serious clinical findings. These conditions can be treated by reducing the iodine intake, by giving inorganic iodine, by treating by beta blockers, by treating antithyroidal drugs, and some of the time patient may undergo in ICU treatment. So now I am discussing with you the lab findings of hyperthyroidism. In hyperthyroidism, the serum TSH level will be decreased. Normally it is 0.3 to 5 units international units per ml in adults. It decreases. However, the free T4, the thyroglobulin, the total T4 and the T3 will be increased, because as the name indicate, hyperthyroidism increase these all hormones, so they all will increases. However, this result in a negative feedback inhibition of TSH, so TSH level will be decreased. Another test is the radioactive iodine uptake. It will show increased uptake in Graves' disease and also in toxic adenoma. However, in thyroiditis it will show decreased uptake, because in thyroiditis the cause is only the inflammation. Okay. How it is treated? Usually it is treated by beta blockers to control the symptoms induced by increased adrenergic tone. Okay. So most of the time the hyperthyroidism is treated by beta blockers and by treating the cause which is behind the hyperthyroidism. So dear student, I am discussing with you the first and most common and major cause of hyperthyroidism, that is Graves' disease, also known as diffuse toxic goiter. It is the most common cause of endogenous hyperthyroidism. Endogenous means when the hormone excessively produced from the gland. not any outside source. Most common cause of endogenous hyperthyroidism. It is characterized by triad of thyrotoxicosis, ophthalmopathy and dermopathy, that is pretibial myxedema. So there are three things most commonly happen which are compulsory to call it as a Graves' disease. First of all, thyrotoxicosis, second ophthalmopathy, and third is the dermopathy. It usually occurs in female, most commonly, dominantly. It is an autoimmune thyroid disease, and it occurs in after 20 to 40 within the 20 to 40 year of age, that is in second to fourth decade. It is strongly associated with hemoleukocyte antigen DR3 and HLA-B8, which is a genetic disorder. Okay. So in short, Graves' disease is a hyperthyroidism type which shows thyrotoxicosis, ophthalmopathy and dermopathy. It is female dominant disease. It is an autoimmune disease. It occurs in after 20 year of age, below 40 year of age, associated with HLA-DR3 and HLA-B8. So how does it happen and what are the clinical features of Graves' disease? Basically, as I said, it is an autoimmune disorder. It is caused by activation of thyroid epithelial cells by autoantibodies. These autoantibodies are against the TSH receptors. It mimics TSH action thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins. It causes the hyperfunctioning of the gland. It presents as a in patient 50% it causes exophthalmos, that is the protrusion of the eyeball in front. It is an infiltrative ophthalmopathy. There is a proptosis and muscle weakness of the eye, and there is an adipose and glycose aminoglycans deposition in the orbital tissue. What happened, my dear students? There is a protrusion of the eyeball. It is associated with increased volume of retroorbital connective tissues and extraauricular muscles, and this occurs due to many reasons. One of them is there is a marked infiltration of the retroorbital space by mononuclear cells, predominantly T cells. So whenever there is behind in the retroorbital area there is a mononuclear infiltrate accumulation, they cause the retroorbital space expansion and result in this exophthalmos. Second cause is there is an inflammation with edema and swelling of the extraocular muscles. Eye muscles swell up and there is an inflammation which results in this bulging of the eyeball. Then there is an accumulation of extracellular matrix component, specifically hydrophilic glycose aminoglycans such as hyaluronic acid and chondroitin sulfate. If this start depositing, it also causes this bulging and swelling. Then the fourth cause is the increased number of fat adipocytes. This is increase in number causes this swelling and bulging of the eyeball. It is the most important sign of the Graves' disease. In Graves' disease, there is IgG TSH receptors antibodies which can cross placenta and produces transient hyperthyroidism in fetus. So if the female is mother or having a baby, the antibodies which are against the TSH receptors, immunoglobulins, thicker in placenta and can produce hyperthyroidism in the fetus. The second most important clinical feature of Graves' disease is the pretibial myxedema. This myxedema is usually due to excess glycosamine glycans in dermis. You can see this foot and the leg, they show edematous skin, and the edematous area in the pretibial area. This occurs because of the deposition of glycosamine glycan in the dermis, causes the swelling and bulging, non-pitting edema of this leg, or you can say the foot. Morphologically, the thyroid gland shows diffuse enlargement, usually symmetrical. You can see these are the two lobes of the thyroid gland. They are diffusely enlarged. On sectioning, they will show beefy red cut surface, and this will show hyperplastic thyroid follicles with papillary enfoldings. I have shown you in the previous slide the thyroid follicles have a single lining of cuboidal cells, wherein this you can see the hyperplasia of the thyroid cells. There may be papillary finger-like projections within the lumen, like this, like this. There is an infolding or papillary-like infolding of the thyroid follicular cells. This is called hyperplastic thyroid follicles with papillary enfolding. The follicular nuclei remain round and basally located, may be clear. However, the colloid is typically decreased. The lumen is not full of the colloid. There is deficient areas are these which are near to the epithelium. So colloid is decreased, and when it is present, it shows prominent peripheral scalloping. Peripheral scalloping, that is this empty spaces which are near the epithelium. This is called peripheral scalloping. It also shows lymphocytic inflammation, which is patchy in the stroma. It may varies in their concentration or degree. So what are the most important findings in the histopathologically? There will be hyperplasia of the thyroid follicles. There will be papillary enfolding. There will be decreased amount of colloid, and there is a scalloping of the colloid, peripheral scalloping. It may shows lymphocytic infiltration as well. The lab findings of Graves' disease are almost same to the hyperthyroidism lab findings, which I have discussed with you in the previous slides. That is, there will be TSH which is decreased, free T4, T3 will be increased, thyroid autoantibodies will be positive, nuclear thyroid scintigraphy like iodine 123 and titanium 99 diffuse increase iodine uptake, and the treatment is drug therapy or radioactive iodine, or if most surgery is required if it is uncontrolled by drug therapy or radioactive iodine therapy. Okay. The third disorder of the thyroid gland is hyperthyroidism. Previously we were discussing hyperthyroidism when there is an excess. So hyperthyroidism when there is a low value of T3, T4 in the blood. So this condition is called hyperthyroidism. By definition, it is a condition which is caused by structural or functional derangement that interferes with the production of thyroid hormone, or in other words, it is a decreased production of thyroid hormone. It is classified just like hyperthyroidism into two. One is the primary hyperthyroidism and another is the secondary hyperthyroidism. Primary when the major cause is thyroid, belongs to the thyroid gland. Secondary when the cause belongs to the pituitary or hypothalamus rather than thyroid gland. Now there is a tabulated form of hypothyroidism which showing the causes. First of all, primary cause, genetic defects in thyroid development like mutation of PAX8 paired box, like mutation of forehead box antigen gene, like TSH receptor mutations. These rare conditions, genetic conditions, may cause hypothyroidism. Then thyroid hormone resistance syndrome, which is also a rare condition in which there is a THRB, that is thyroid hormone receptors beta mutations occurs. Then most likely after surgery, if the thyroid gland is taken out from the body, then what is going to produce T3 and T4 in the body? This may also cause hypothyroidism. Radioiodine therapy may result in hypothyroidism, or external irradiation may cause suppression of the T3, T4 hormone production. Then certain autoimmune disorders, which are usually the most common causes of hypothyroidism, in which Hashimoto thyroiditis is the topmost condition that cause decrease in T3, T4 level. Then iodine deficiency is the second cause of hypothyroidism. Drugs such as lithium, iodides, para-aminosalicylic acid also cause decreased hypothyroid production. Then congenital biosynthetic defect like dysharmogenetic disorders of goiter, they may cause hypothyroidism. These are the primary cause which belongs to the thyroid. Then there may be secondary causes like either there is a pituitary failure or hypothalamic failure, which usually rare conditions, they may cause hypothyroidism. Now I am discussing a briefly about these primary hypothyroidism condition, most common conditions. Like first is the congenital hypothyroidism. Congenital hypothyroidism usually occurs when there is an endemic iodine deficiency. A baby born by a iodine deficient female, it will result in congenital hypothyroidism. Or there may be inborn errors of the thyroid metabolism like occurs in dysharmogenetic goiter. Either there is an iodide transport in thyrocyte is defective, or there is an organification process of iodine is defective, or there is iodotyrosine coupling to form active T3 and T4 is defective, or there is thyroid agenesis. Thyroid development is impaired. Thyroid is not growing. So this condition is resulting in hypothyroidism. Or there is thyroid hypoplasia. There is a reduced number of the thyroid cells to produce thyroid hormones. This also causes congenital hypothyroidism or primary hyperthyroidism. The second most important cause is the autoimmune hypothyroidism. It occurs in iodine sufficient areas of the world, and the vast majority cases are due to Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is also an autoimmune disease in which multiple autoantibodies are found in the body which causes the damage to the thyroid cells. These circulating antibodies are found in blood. They are antimicrobial antibodies, antithyroid peroxidase antibodies, antithyroglobulin antibodies. These antibodies causes cellular reactions, causes the destruction of the thyroid follicular cells, and this mononuclear infiltration, fibrosis of the thyroid gland. So when the normal parenchyma are lost, no production of the T3, T4 hormone, they cause hypothyroidism. However, autoimmune hypothyroidism can also occur in conjunction or in isolation with autoimmune polyendocrine syndrome type 1 and type 2. The last and the third most important cause of hypothyroidism is iatrogenic hypothyroidism. When there is no genuine cause associated with the thyroid, one is the surgical or radiation induced ablation, other is the drugs. So these are indirect causes basically which result in the decreased production of thyroid hormone. The secondary hypothyroidism causes includes pituitary failure or hypothalamic failure. Both failure of these organs result in decrease in the TSH and TRH level. For example, in hypopituitarism, either there is a trauma to the pituitary gland, maybe postpartum pituitary necrosis or a tumor, or radiation induced damage. Similarly, in hypothalamus, maybe trauma, radiation, tumor, or any sort of infiltrative disease of the hypothalamus result in the decrease in TSH and TRH level, which ultimately leads to hypothyroidism. Now, my dear student, I am discussing with you two entities which encountered in hypothyroidism. If hypothyroidism occurs in adults, in infants or in young children, it is called as cretinism. If it occurs in older children or in adults, it is called myxedema. So there are two entities. One is cretinism, the other is the myxedema. Cretinism, hypothyroidism that develops in infancy or early childhood. Cause is dietary iodine deficiency or rarely genetic defects that interfere with biosynthesis of thyroid hormone. As you see in this picture, there is a child who is showing some features. What happened when there is a iodine deficiency and there is a decreased production of impaired synthesis of T3, T4, it causes some skeletal system and central nervous system impaired development. So whenever there is a skeletal system and central nervous system impaired development due to the deficiency of T3, T4, it causes a disease which is called cretinism. And the children of this deficiency or this disease presented as mentally retarded. They have usually short stature. They have coarse facial features. They have a protruding tongue, and they show umbilical hernia. This will I show in you in the next slide. These kids are mentally retarded because of the impaired development of the central nervous system. They have short stature, they have coarse facial features, they have protruding tongue, and they have umbilical hernia. Okay, now you can see there is an umbilical hernia in this child. You can see there is a short stature, protrusion of the tongue, and there is umbilical swelling, which is herniation basically. How will you diagnose the cretinism? There are following tests. We will measure the serum T4 level, which will be low, and their TSH level, which will be high. We also see the delayed skeletal maturation on X-ray. These patients are treated by giving thyroid hormone replacement medicine, and it is prevented by neonatal screening within 60 days of birth, and improved prognosis with therapy started within first 2 months of life. The second most important condition of hypothyroidism is mixed edema, which occurs in adults or in older children. By definition, hypothyroidism which is developing in older children or adult is called mixed edema. As the name indicates, there is an edematous swelling of the subcutaneous soft tissue. The patient presents with slow physical activity. There is a generalized fatigue, apathy, slow speech and intellectual functions. The patient suffers from cold intolerance, cannot tolerate the low temperature. They are usually overweight because of the decreased metabolic effect. They suffer from constipation and decreased sweating, which is due to decreased sympathetic activity. In this picture, you can see there is a pedal edema and there is a swelling which results in the mixed edema, basically which are due to the deposition of glycosamine glycans in the soft tissue. And this edema is non-pitting edema. So mixed edema present cool skin and decreased blood flow. The peripheral vasodilation doesn't occur in this condition as there is a peripheral vasoconstriction. So the skin capillaries are contracted and this results in the coolness of the skin. There is non-pitting edema, broadening and coarsening of the facial features, enlargement of the tongue and deepening of the voice. As you can see in this picture, the person present as a dry hair, coarse, sparse. The eyebrow will be thin at the lateral end. There will be periorbital edema and the face will be puffy. Like you can see, the cheeks are puffy and dull with dry skin. How can we diagnose it? As you already know, that whenever there is a hypothyroidism, the T4, T3 level will be low. However, the TSH will be increased because the negative feedback mechanism is reduces, so the hormone level will be high, but the hormone level will be low, but the TSH level will be increased. Now the last but not the least, fourth disorder of the thyroid, which is thyroiditis. As the name indicates, itis means inflammation, so there is an inflammation of the thyroid gland which is called thyroiditis. The disease includes, in these conditions, result in acute illness with severe thyroid pain and thyroid dysfunction. Previously we were discussing in goiter, there is a painful condition which is called as toxic nodular goiter. In these all conditions are painful. So thyroiditis are of multiple types. The most important we will discuss in later slides, that is Hashimoto thyroiditis. It is a chronic lymphocytic thyroiditis. Second is the granulomatous decurvin thyroiditis. Third, subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis, and the last is riddle thyroiditis. So there are four more important types of thyroiditis which we will discuss. Hashimoto thyroiditis is an autoimmune disease that results in destruction of thyroid gland and gradual and progressive thyroid failure. Most common cause of hypothyroidism in areas of the body where iodine deficiency doesn't occur. It means the iodine levels are sufficient in that areas. It is more common in women with a ratio of 10:1 or 20:1. Mean age at diagnosis is 60 years and it ranges between 45 to 65 years. Its prevalence increases with age and it's tend to be familial. So in short, Hashimoto thyroiditis is the autoimmune disease. It is caused by presence of multiple autoantibodies either against the thyroglobulin receptors or microsomium. It is the most common cause of hypothyroidism, usually occurs in the iodine sufficient level areas. more common in females and usually occurs in older age females. Now, what is the mechanism behind this Hashimoto thyroiditis? It basically occurs because of the production of cytotoxic T cells that destroy the parenchyma of the thyroid gland. This works by type 4 hypersensitivity reaction. Initially, thyrotoxicosis occurs, but eventually it leads to hyperthyroidism. Secondly, there is a blocking of immunoglobulin autoantibodies against the TSH receptors, which ultimately decrease the hormone synthesis, and this is caused by type 2 hypersensitivity reaction, which I'll explain you diagrammatically in the later slide. Third, in Hashimoto thyroiditis, there is a presence of antimicrobial and anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, which develops as a result of gland injury, and this will causes the decreased production of the thyroid hormone. Now, the diagrammatic representation of Hashimoto thyroiditis. You can see these are the thyroid follicular cells, thyroid epithelium, cuboidal cells. Breakdown in self-tolerance induction of thyroid autoimmunity occurs. First of all, when autoantibodies form in the body, it causes the CD8 cytotoxic T cell stimulation, which causes the cell-mediated hypersensitivity reaction, and cell-mediated immunity called the cellular destruction of these follicular cells. On the other hand, the CD4 T helper cells, they causes the production of gamma interferon, which stimulates or activate macrophages, which destroy the thyrocyte cells, and in this way there is a destruction of the thyroid epithelium. The third and most important cause, that is the when autoantibodies form in the body, it causes production of plasma cells, which produce anti-thyroid antibodies. These anti-thyroid antibodies, when combined with the receptors present on the thyroid follicular cells, they cause the stimulation of natural killer cells, and there is a binding via Fc receptor, and antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity occurs and causes the destruction of these thyroid follicular cells. So by these three mechanisms, the thyroid follicular cells, because of the presence of autoantibodies, are destroyed, and when the thyroid epithelium reduces, the cell decreases in number, there is a decreased production of the thyroid hormones, and the condition occurs, that is hypothyroidism. Clinically, the hypothyroid shows diffuse, firm enlargement of the thyroid gland. Diffuse, firm and enlargement of the thyroid gland. The familial cases, they are usually associated with HLA-DR3 and HLA-DR5. Higher incidence in Turner and Down syndrome, and also in familial Alzheimer's diseases. So the people which are suffering from these disorders or these syndrome may show Hashimoto thyroiditis. It may coexist with other autoimmune diseases such as Sjogren's syndrome and diabetes. And there is an increased risk of developing primary thyroid lymphoma. So the most important complication regarding Hashimoto thyroiditis is primary thyroid lymphoma. My dear student, you can see morphologically this is firm, diffusely enlarged thyroid gland, and on cut surface you can see the pale tan yellow and nodular configuration of the thyroid parenchyma. This is thyroid gland, This is the capsule outer covering, and these are the nodular areas who are pale in color and it is firmer consistency. Histopathologically, they are showing marked lymphoplasmacytic infiltration with germinal center formation. Follicles are small as compared to the normal parenchyma with scant cytocolloid, and the follicles may show oncocytic metaplasia, that is called Hurther cell change. Some of the time squamous metaplasia is also common. Long-standing thyroiditis may show fibrosis, which is variable, and the nodularity of the follicles and inflammation may extend to form hemorrhage. Like in these slides, you can see this is the thyroid gland showing multiple lymphoid follicles. These are basically lymphoid cells. This is a lymphoid follicle. This is the germinal center. The paler area represents the germinal centers. The peripheral area shows the boundary of the follicles. In this slide, this is a germinal center. This is a lymphoid follicle. A follicle shows the darker area and the central paler area. The central paler area is the germinal centers. These are the thyroid follicular cells. You can see there is an abundant amount of cytoplasm in these cells, which is basically a Hurther cell change. In this slide, you can see these small follicles. They have little amount of colloid in it, and the follicular cells show eosinophilic cytoplasm, which is comparatively more than the normal parenchyma. Like here, this is called oncocytic change. So there is a lymphocytic infiltration in the stroma, as well as there is a presence of lymphoid follicles, which is the hallmark of this disease. Few more things which are important to discuss with you is that Hashimoto thyroiditis may coexist with other thyroid neoplasm. For example, papillary thyroid carcinoma, in which most of the time Hashimoto thyroiditis can exist. These follicular nuclear changes may overlap. Okay. Rare malignant transformation into lymphoma, and the most common lymphoma which occurs in Hashimoto thyroiditis is the mild lymphoma, either is diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. Benign follicles and lymphocytes may form nodules separated from the gland, which are called as parasitic nodules in soft tissue. So Hashimoto thyroiditis can occur in papillary thyroid carcinoma or can lead to papillary thyroid carcinoma. It can also cause mild lymphoma or diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. It can cause parasitic nodule formation in the soft tissue because of the presence of benign follicles and lymphocytes. The second most important thyroiditis type is the granulomatous thyroiditis, which is also called as De Quervain thyroiditis. It is a self-limited disease probably caused by a viral infection, example like Coxsackie virus or mumps virus. Most commonly occurs in women with the age of 40 to 50 or with a ratio of 4:1. Granulomatous inflammation occurs with multinucleated giant cells. You can see in this slide, this is a thyroid tissue. You can see some thyroid follicles here, this and this. These are thyroid follicles, and the stroma shows these two granulomas, 1 and 2. These two granulomas showing peripheral palisading epithelioid histocytes. There are lymphocytes, and it is a multinucleated giant cells. This is Langenheim type giant cells. Similarly, in this granuloma, you can see palisading epithelioid histocytes, there are peripheral lymphocytes, and there is multinucleated giant cells. This is a horseshoe-shaped giant cells which shows multiple nuclei. This is a large macrophage basically. So in this condition, there is an inflammation which is in the sort of chronic granulomatous inflammation, the central area of necrosis. Okay, so how does it shows clinical features? Most commonly it present as a painful thyroid and often preceded by upper respiratory tract infection by a viral infection basically. Initially there is a thyrotoxicosis from gland destruction, increased serum T4 level but decreased serum TSH level, decreased iodine uptake level. It is a self-limited disease and does not require treatment. After a few months, after the viral infection as goes on, it ended, it result in the decrease in this type of inflammation, and ultimately the thyroid parenchyma becomes normal. But it is a very severe condition because it is painful. So most of the time the patient suffers from highly painful thyroid gland and comes to the clinic, and due to this pain it is either treated as a surgery or as a The second last condition is the subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis. This is the only type of thyroiditis which is painless. It is also an autoimmune disease that develops after pregnancy, up to 5% of the cases, which is postpartum thyroiditis. It is typically painless and it is characterized by mild hyperthyroidism, goitrogenous enlargement, or both. Either the patient has these two conditions at the same time, or either they show only mild hyperthyroidism or either show mild enlargement as a goitrous. So this is one of the type in which there is lymphocytic inflammation with some sort of acute inflammation as well around the thyroid follicles. Now this is the last but not the least condition, which is the last form of thyroiditis. This is the Riddle's thyroiditis. Its etiology is unknown. It is a very rare condition in which there is a fibrous tissue replacement of the gland. The whole gland, as you can see, this is a histopathological representation of the thyroid parenchyma. There is no follicle. You won't be able to see any follicle, any colloid material. Only there is a fibrous tissue which is represented by these pinkish lines. These are the fibrous tissue, and there are some purple areas which is basically representing the nuclei of inflammatory cells. So there is extensive fibrosis. There is a replacement of the whole gland by fibrous tissue. This fibrous tissue may extend to the surrounding tissue, can produce tracheal obstruction. So the thyroid gland, when it undergoes a complete fibrosis, it can spread to the surrounding area, especially for tracheal tissue, causing tracheal tissue obstruction. It is associated with other sclerosing conditions like sclerosing mediastinitis. It may cause hypothyroidism. When there is no cell left behind to produce T3, T4, then the condition occurs, which is hypothyroidism. This condition basically treated by corticosteroids or by a tamoxifen, which is the first line therapy of it, or it may be treated by this if the corticosteroid therapy is unsuccessful. Most of the time the surgery is the main area of prevention. So Riddle thyroiditis is one of the type of thyroiditis in which instead of major inflammation, the fibrosis is basically the cause of the disease. Okay. So thank you, my dear students, for listening me. Please, I hope you will understand the whole presentation. Briefly, the thyroid disorder shows some inflammatory disorders like thyroiditis, in which Hashimoto thyroiditis is the most important type. There are two entities, hyper and hypothyroidism. Their causes are very important. In hyperthyroidism, the Graves' disease is very important. How does it presented? What are the morphological features and what is the pathology behind this? I hope you will understand. Then the causes of hypothyroidism, how hypothyroidism presents in a person, if it is child or if it is adult. I think you have better understand the cretinism, mixed edema and their presentation. If you have any question, you can email to me on my email address. Thank you, dear student.